A brushtail possum claws at a curved steel hood 2 meters above the ground in Karori Valley, Wellington, and slides straight back down. It tries 3 more times. It never gets over. That failure happens in August 1999, the same month workers finish the last stretch of an 8.6-kilometer fence wrapped around 225 hectares of regenerating forest above the city. Nothing like it exists anywhere else on the planet. The fence excludes 13 species of mammal at once, animals that can climb, jump, dig, and squeeze through gaps smaller than a coin. And it does it with wire mesh, a rolled steel cap, and a strip of buried skirt. No electricity, no poison built into the structure itself. Just geometry, tested until it could not be beaten. It took 9 years to reach that possum's failed climb, and it started with a man who had never designed a fence in his life. Jim Lynch joined the local branch of the Royal Forest and Bird Society in 1980 with his wife Eve. By 1990, he was drafting something bigger than committee work, a full inventory of Wellington's remaining natural land called Natural Wellington, a plan to preserve and enhance the natural treasures of Wellington City. Its working title was Blunter, Bring the Birds Back to Wellington, because by 1990, there was almost nothing left to bring back. The dawn chorus over the city had thinned to a handful of introduced species. Rats, stoats, cats, and possums had spent over a century working through what remained of the native bush, and one valley told the story in numbers. Possum browsing alone was stripping an estimated 400 tons of vegetation out of the Karori catchment every year, tearing into rata, tree fuchsia, and koikohe faster than the forest could recover. Lynch had already watched one attempt to fix this fail. The Department of Conservation had tried a low-level electric fence to keep rats out of a small patch of bush nearby. It didn't work. Rats went under it, over it, around it. But the failure planted a question neither Lynch nor the Department of Conservation could let go of. What if a barrier existed that predators genuinely could not cross? In 1991, the Greater Wellington Regional Council decommissioned the valley's upper dam, a Victorian water catchment structure from the 1870s that had outlived its purpose. The land was suddenly available. In 1992, Lynch put the idea on paper in a formal proposal, a native wildlife sanctuary for Wellington City, and opened it with a picture rather than a pitch. Imagine, he wrote, a secret valley that's only 2 or 3 kilometers from the central business district of the capital city. It's a large and spectacular valley, steep-sided with rugged profile, clothed in vigorously regenerating native hardwood forest. He was describing a future no mainland site in the world had ever managed to build. The feasibility study ran through 1993. Public consultation followed in 1994. The Wellington and Greater Wellington Councils gave it the go-ahead, and the Karori Sanctuary Trust was formally launched in July 1995. On paper, the project now had land, permission, and a mission. What it did not have was a fence that could actually do the job. That was the part nobody could solve. In 1993, a panel of 22 conservation managers, scientists, and engineers sat down to review every predator exclusion fence design that existed anywhere in the world. None of them worked for what Lynch needed. A standard livestock fence stops sheep. It does nothing against an animal that can jump 1.5 meters from standing, dig 0.5 meters underground in a night, or squeeze through a gap the width of 2 fingers. Cats jump higher than almost anything else in the valley. Stoats climb and jump. Rats burrow. Mice, the smallest problem, need almost no gap at all. A fence built to stop one of these animals typically fails against the rest. Nobody on Earth had ever built one that stopped all of them at once, permanently. So the panel scrapped every existing template and started over. Through 1994, engineers built a prototype in a Wellington warehouse and tested it against live animals under camera. Rats, mice, cats, stoats, possums, weasels, and ferrets were run at the barrier over and over. Their attempts were recorded on video so the design team could see exactly where each species found a weakness. 4 distinct design concepts came out of the trials. The team chose the simplest one to build, a wire mesh wall, topped with a curved steel hood sitting above a buried mesh skirt that ran horizontally under the ground. 3 parts, no moving components. Detailed design work wasn't finished until 1998, and by the time it was locked in, the prototype had been tested against nearly 200 animals. One detail from those tests still gets pointed out by staff 25 years later. Engineers noticed mice climbing the interior bolts on the underside of the curved cap, wrapping their tails around the bolt heads and using the tail as leverage to flick themselves up and over. The fix wasn't a redesign. It was a 5-centimeter strip of flat metal shielding the bolts, added at the last minute. A fence engineered to stop a possum weighing 4 kilograms was nearly beaten by a rodent using its own tail as a tool, and the solution came down to 5 centimeters of steel. The finished specification called for a fence 1.8 meters tall to stop the best jumpers, mesh with gaps no wider than 6 by 50 millimeters to stop mice squeezing through, and a skirt buried 400 millimeters into the ground to stop burrowing rats. Because the route ran alongside a public walking track, the trust raised the height to 2.2 meters for visitor safety. That height change was not free of friction. Some Karori residents pushed back at public meetings once they realized a fence taller than a person would run along a track they had walked for years. Worried about the view and about access to land, they considered theirs long before anyone called it a sanctuary. In February 1998, community funders committed $2.5 million to build it anyway. Construction began in April 1999. By August, all 8.6 kilometers were standing. Then came the part that made the fence meaningless if it failed, clearing everything already living inside the loop. Wellington Regional Council teams trapped the valley's possums first. In 8 weeks, they pulled out more than 1,000 animals, 3 tons of possum in total, out of a population that had been quietly eating a forest to death for decades. Resource consent was granted for an aerial drop of cereal bait laced with brodifacoum across the valley, the first time that poison had ever been approved for helicopter distribution on mainland New Zealand rather than an offshore island. 4.5 tons of bait went down over 2 days by air and by hand. Bait stations and tracking tunnels went in afterward to catch anything the drop missed. By the end of the operation, follow-up surveys found no surviving rats, mice, stoats, cats, hares, deer, pigs, goats, or cattle inside the fence line. 13 species of introduced mammal eradicated simultaneously on a fenced piece of mainland for the first time anywhere on the planet. The alternative to all of this already existed, and New Zealand had been living with it for decades. Unfenced reserves requiring poison drops and trap lines repeated indefinitely, year after year, forever, because nothing stopped predators from walking straight back in. Zealandia's fence turned an endless recurring cost into a single one-time barrier. A quarter of a century later, staff were still describing that trade as the whole reason the sanctuary worked at all. None of that data mattered yet without the birds Lynch had set out to bring back. So that became the next phase of work, layered gradually behind the same fence. 14 keka were released inside the valley in the early 2000s. 20 years later, more than 800 of their descendants filled the sanctuary and had pushed out over the fence line into Wellington's suburbs, so successfully that the city's entire urban kaka population traces back almost entirely to those original birds. North Island saddleback went in 2002. 39 birds relocated from predator-free islands. Kareru, the native wood pigeon, followed between 2002 and 2005. Hihi, the stitchbird, one of the country's rarest species, was released in 2005. And in February 2019, the sanctuary announced the birth of its 1,000th hi-hi chick, a bird that had been almost extinct when the project began. Little spotted kiwi went in 2000, the first mainland population of the species since the 19th century. 72 tuatara arrived from Stevens Island in December 2005, the first mainland release of a reptile lineage that predates the dinosaurs in more than 200 years. Takahe, a bird once presumed extinct until it was rediscovered in 1948, with fewer than 350 left anywhere, got its first Zealandia pair in 2011. Rifleman, one of the country's smallest native birds, followed in 2019. Scientists call the spillover the halo effect. Tua, Kareru, and Kaka now travel and breed across Greater Wellington, well beyond the fence, carried outward by a population that has nowhere left to overflow but out. More than 23 native species have been re-established inside the valley since the gates first closed to predators. And Time magazine named the sanctuary one of the world's 100 greatest places in 2019. The idea did not stay inside Karori Valley either. Once the design proved itself, similar fences went up elsewhere across the country. A 7.7-hectare fragment of lowland forest at Rickerton Bush, 98 hectares at Bushy Park, and eventually a 47-kilometer fence around Sanctuary Mountain, Maungatauteri, enclosing 3,500 hectares, the largest predator-fenced area in the world. None of it existed as a working template before the panel of 22 sat down in a Wellington warehouse in 1993 and decided the available designs simply weren't good enough. The fence itself is now being rebuilt section by section a quarter century after it went up, its steel seams finally rusting after outliving its own design life. Engineers working on the replacement keep the same three-part logic Lynch's team landed on in 1998. Wall, hood, skirt. Nobody has needed to reinvent it. There is a 5-centimeter strip of flat metal riveted under the curved cap of that fence, hidden from every visitor who walks past it. Placed there because a mouse tried to use its own tail against 9 years of engineering and nearly won. Above it, on any given afternoon, a kaka launches off a branch, crosses the fence line without slowing down, and disappears toward the city skyline it was never designed to reach. The mesh below was built to keep predators out. It was never built to keep the birds in. And that was always the point. It is easy to miss the steel strip, and it is the whole story in miniature. A project measured in centuries, decided by centimeters, built by a man with no fencing background who refused to accept that impossible was a permanent word. The valley he pictured in 1992, filled with birdsong 2 kilometers from a city center, exists now because of that strip of steel and the 8.5 kilometers of fence around it. If you want to try something closer to that same idea on your own land, working with a system instead of fighting it, there's a guide for that linked below. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. We publish one every week.